When speaking about the best moments of a show as long as Game of Thrones, many scenes may come into our minds. It may be the death of Joffrey Baratheon, if we wanted our much-awaited revenge fantasy. If we want an example of great foreshadowing and dialogue writing, it may be the conversation between Cersei Lannister and Robert Baratheon, pondering about their life till now. Or it could be the moment Night King revealed himself to Jon Snow, if we wanted great tension and hype. But there's a scene in this series that I believe stands as the most memorable and hard hitting event that would evoke emotions from anybody who has followed the series for this long. I'm, of course, talking about the trial in Season 4, Episode 6. In my opinion, this scene manages to stand above all other scenes in Game of Thrones due to how much it manages to say in such short time. Let's get into it. The first thing to note is how brilliantly the scene is shot. In this scene, we see that Tyrion is at the center of the stage and his father holds a high crown, sitting atop the Iron Throne. This is very reflective of their relationship in the sense that even though Tyrion is a sarcastic, free minded character on the exterior, he is completely controlled by his father Tywin. In Tyrion's life, Tywin is nothing but a king which demands absolute submission, and Tyrion a criminal, or worse, an abomination, that did not have the right to exist. Furthermore, we see that they are surrounded by other members of the Lannister family. Cersei Lannister, who represents the injustice and prejudice Tyrion has had to endure throughout his life. She sits confident yet filled with wrath and hatred. And then Jaime Lannister, who is representation of love and attachment Tyrion has in this world. However, this force is weak. With only one hand, Jaime has to resort to scheming with the dictator of Tyrion's fate. On top of that, Tyrion is surrounded by background characters that are all too willing to point fingers at him with no reason, putting him in the lowest position any man could be in. Secondly, what really elevates the scene is the performance by both Peter Dinklage and CharlesDance throughout this whole encounter. In my opinion, these two are already the best performers in the series, and considering the other cast members, that is no easy feat. Both actors have such an in depth understanding of their respective characters, and not a single moment feels artificial. When it comes to Peter Dinklage, we can feel his nerves, his anxiety, his pain. It hurts every cell of our body. His face often shifting between monstrous rage and unimaginable despair. It was truly his best moments. When it comes to Charles Dance, he puts on a facade of a calm and collected leader that is scheming and planning, but underneath, he shows the utter disgust he feels toward his own son. Both of their characters go through great changes within the scene. When it comes to Tywin Lannister, he believed that this would be the moment to actualize all his dreams and desires. He gets every wish of his true by having Tyrion sent to Castle Black and Jaime ruling Casterly Rock. His mannerism conveys a deep sense of accomplishment for what he has done and feels like his lifelong feud between him and his own son has come to a resolution. In his conscience, he cannot have Tyrion killed, and this is the only way he wins. Tyrion, on the other hand, comes off as a child pleading with his parents for the tiniest amount of affection. He comes here destroyed by everything he trusts in this world, and now filled with rage. This rage does come out to the audience of the trial, but this is not the entire truth. Tyrion was already willing to save the King's Landing when he was unloved, but transforming his pain into anger and violence could provide him with some solace. When it comes to the dialogue, this is when the hardest hitting line of Game of Thrones drop. I am guilty of being a dwarf. This sums up the relationship between the two characters and, most importantly, showcases Tyrion's struggle in the most explosive manner. He sees himself as an abomination. He was cursed in some sort of way from his birth, and this curse has followed him all his life. He's weak at heart and has a fragile ego. Even though he says that he is a dwarf with no hesitation, he has detested himself all his life. He feels like a victim, hence feeling powerless against the great forces that surround him. These forces become apparent from events such as rejection from love, betrayal from family, and societal prejudice. He is by all means the smallest man in the room, and he is still beaten down by the world. Regardless of his good nature and sympathies for the underprivileged, he has been robbed of justice. This is also the moment the story completely changes. From this moment, Tyrion's evolution leads in some way to the end of King's Landing. From this encounter, Tyrion makes a point to throw away the deal he had on the table. With that one move, Tyrion abandons the grasp Tywin had onto him and dooms him to misery. In a sense, the one leader that cared about his people has been abandoned by them, and this betrayal fuels the flames that engulf the city. Tywin is now in an unwinnable position, and he cannot accept defeat. But what is sad is that Tyrion doomed himself just as much to curse his hated father. This also showcases how Tyrion's character starts to devolve into a more negative character that makes much more questionable choices. Just to cause maximum damage, he taunts and screams at Cersei and Shay, where his voice takes on a monstrous sound. And finally, what makes this scene great is that it is a huge payoff and an end in some way. Throughout the last 3 seasons, we have seen everything Tyrion has gone through. For all intents and purposes, he is our underdog hero, just as much, if not more, than Jon Snow is. In fact, one could argue that Tyrion goes through some of the worst torture in Game of Thrones. He is consistently humiliated by Joffrey and Cersei and is always made to feel like he is less of a man due to his height. He is overlooked despite his intellect. He is also unwanted, as he was thrown to death row by his own father for a crime that everybody knew he had no part in. After all this, watching the unbeatable Tywin Lannister defeated and humiliated by his abandoned son seems like the best payoff we can have. Here we understand that Tywin lived on borrowed time. His arrogance and control rested on the belief that Tyrion is too weak to ever stand up to him. But he could no longer manipulate Tyrion, and that led to his demise. The scene acts as a perfect midpoint between the first 4 seasons and the last 4. Here we can see that this event set way for the doom of King's Landing, as we can see that every leader that came after Tywin lacked the wisdom and strength to lead King's Landing successfully. Here, King's Landing loses 2 capable leaders that could have saved them from the fate to come. Furthermore, the Lannister family loses its standing. If Tywin had listened to himself when giving his speech about wisdom to Tommen, he would have realized that Tyrion was the only way for the Lannister name to live on. Hate clouded his judgment, which resulted in his own death by the hands of his own child that was most like him. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.